What's up, everybody? It's your boy Montoya Smith, aka Black Socrates, and welcome to episode 12 of Politically Conscious. We right back at you. I got my man Emille Bryant in here, as well as my brother Shelley Wynters, even though I can't see his face right now, but it's all good. We can hear him.
I'm here.
All right, cool. We're gonna rock it out. What's up, Emille? How you doing this morning, brother?
Fantastic. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you bringing us back together again for another exciting episode of Politically Conscious. This has been fun so far.
No, absolutely. We got our man Shelley Wynters on with us this morning. I want to start the appropriate way.
Hey, Montoya. It says you got to add me to the backstage.
Okay, let me see what I did here. Okay. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
Because you can hear Shelley, right? Okay, got you. All right, let me see what's going on here. All right, can we hear him? Okay, just want to make sure, y'all. All right. But anyway, I wanted to start this appropriate coming off the inauguration. Our man Shelley Wynters of the Shelley Wynters Show. He actually went to the inauguration. But let's start the show off just highlighting this morning's discussion as we want to recap the inauguration and get into some other things that are going, other political cuts as we do each week on Politically Conscious. But let's start this thing like this.
The golden age of America. The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again.
Emille, your response to the intro, again, as this morning's discussion is the inauguration recap, your response to that.
What more could I expect from a showman? P.T. Barnum would be so proud. Let's be very clear. The brother, he did what he had to do to keep his agenda, keep his thriving throngs enthralled. He did what he said, what he needed to say in order to pay them back for their votes. This is going to be one of the most transactional, if not the most transactional presidencies of all time. It's not that it'll be bad or good. It's just a matter of fact. And him saying words in the metaphysical sense about why he was saved, it doesn't matter. What matters is his actions. And what you're going to see, what we're all going to see, is a very transactional president who's going to make America great in his own understanding. And I'm hoping that that includes all Americans, especially the least of us.
Fair enough. Shelley, Sean Hannity called it the perfect inauguration speech. Your thoughts, brother?
I thought it was a great speech. Hold on. I think that he said what he had to say. And if you're a believer, I'm a believer. If I turned my head at the last minute and a bullet whizzed by me that was meant to kill me, I would think God kept me here as well. And if I was a talk radio host, if that would happen to me, I'd say God kept me here to stay on the radio forever. So, I mean, I think that, I think it's a real thing. You can't say it's not true if you're a believer. As for what Emille said about a transactional presidency, if he's always been a transactional guy. He's a businessman. He's not a politician. So he's always been pragmatic and transitional. You give me your vote, this is what I'm going to do. You give me the vote, I'm going to go do it. And I think that I just posted on Facebook I think that people who are, I mean, you can't sustain this. I'm not talking about you two, but people, the community, you can't sustain this level of anger for 4 years. At a certain point, you've got to stop fighting other people's battles. And knowing that he's transactional, get in there, get in the door somewhere to get the transactions done that you need done. And that should be the focus of everybody, quite frankly. You know what I mean? And so that's really what I'm focused on for getting, I want to get some educational priorities done, educational choice priorities done, homeschooling budgets to go up. If education, if state money follows the kid, then let that money follow the kid if the parents want to homeschool. Let that money follow them. Let the parents use that money to homeschool their children. So I think that, these are things that we can get done because we don't have an ideological president. As Emille said, we have a transactional president.
That's right.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely time again, politically conscious to hone in on that absolute fact. I had planned to say that, but I'm not surprised you, as the two astute political consultants on, politically conscious, beat me to pointing out how transactional Trump is. That was like my feather in the hat, and y'all both beat me to it. So it is what it is. But again, we're talking about how to move politically, how to improve how we think about politics. And so y'all are absolutely right. Regardless of which side you own, if you will, take advantage of the fact that he is transactional. I'll say a couple, I always kind of see things from the middle. So Shelley, I'm gonna come back to you on this. But couple things. Well, yeah, a couple things. When I look at that inauguration speech, it actually sounds more like, in my opinion, he's going to clean the swamp, as that was kind of the ideology coming his first term. He's going to clean the swamp more this time, it sounds like, based on that speech. And then the other thing, back to you, Emille, which we pointed out on the last show, is he had the three richest men in America actually sitting behind him at the inauguration speech, which speaks to what we were worried about on the last show of like, hey, he's pulling the veil up on the fact that we are oligarchy, if you will. However, we're like, how much so, considering they're just right in our face? And again, we talked about that on the last show, how, the Democrats have plenty of billionaire oligarchies as well that kind of move them as well, but they're not necessarily always out front. Like he's basically, they're right behind him at the inauguration. But Shelley, on, is it going to be more of a cleaning of the swamps? He's not using that word anymore, but it seems like it to me, just based on how he's coming in and what I saw. That's just a thought I had.
Yeah, I think he's going to drain the swamp, and he's going to drain the swamp of people that have been ineffective or destructive or had their own agenda, against America or against Americans. So I'm all for that, and we all should be for that. I don't think that's a partisan thing. I think that we all should be for that, getting rid of bureaucrats who haven't been elected, who are making policy and impacting our daily lives.
Yeah, Emille, any thoughts about, again, the three richest men in the country sitting right behind him for the inauguration, at least from what I understand?
Sure. I mean, I love what Shelley said, but the fact is that you're going to have a government body, at least a government advisory body called the Department of Government Efficiency, which is run by absolutely not an elected person, because Vivek Ramaswamy just decided to chuck up the deuces and go run for governor of Ohio. So you have a very influential body run by an unelected individual who himself is not a bureaucrat, as in entrenched in the bowels of the federal government, but he is a technocrat in that he does bring a lot of technology and a lot of technological thinking to what will be a very influential body. So when we talk about draining the swamp, the question is, what's going to replace what's already in it? Now, I don't know if the devil I don't know will be better or worse than the devil I do know, but I do know that you cannot drain the swamp and then think it will stay empty. So the question remains, what will fill it once it's drained?
Great question. Great question. Shelley, I know you said you have an echo. Are you able to hear us clearly though? Is it bothering
No, I can hear both of you clearly. It was just an echo. I think you fixed it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I wanted to, technically it might have just worked itself. All right, let's play another cut and continue this conversation.
Black and Hispanic communities, I want to thank you for the tremendous outpouring of love and trust that you have shown me with your vote. We set records, and I will not forget it. I've heard your voices in the campaign, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and his honor, this will be a great honor, but in his honor we will strive together to make his dream a reality. We will make his dream come true.
So he specifically highlights, thank you to African Americans, thank you to Hispanics. And I think this is the perfect time to, y'all kind of beat me to the word. This is where I was going to set it up at, is to remember that he's such a transactional president. Because he says, I look forward to working with you, while some people, based on the rhetoric of the last however many years now, they may say, oh, it's despicable for him to say that on Martin Luther King Day. I'm just talking about the perspectives that's out there. And I really wanted to remind our community specifically to remember how transactional he is when it comes to when he says, I look forward to working with you. Shelley, you pointed out an example on your show last night. I did listen. You were talking about running into the Native American guy. I thought that was just a cool example to show how transactional Trump can be. Again, people may think I'm pushing for Trump. I'm talking about how to be political regardless of what side you're on. But if you will, share that Native American example, and I have another example after that.
Well, I was at the inauguration at the ball on Monday night, and I saw a young Native American. It's about 5 or 6 of them. And I asked one of the gentlemen, I said, hey, who's that? And he's like, he's the president of Navajo Nation. And I said, well, where is that? And he was like, the Four Corners, which is, I think, it was loud in there, but basically explained the Four Corners, New Mexico, Arizona, where the 4 states touch. They're in that area. And there's a lot of natural resources and water. And so they have, because the water is on their land, they have rights to the water. And so he was talking about, they met with Mr. Trump. They told him that they have these natural resources. They want to, use these natural resources, benefit from having the natural resources, in particular water. And Trump said that they were going to do that. And they pushed their people to vote for him. And they were at the inauguration.
But it was something that you said specifically when you said you asked them why, and that to me spoke to the transactional space. So
right,
you asked them why, what did the guy tell you?
Well, he said, when I say why,
why were they there? You asked them specifically.
Oh yeah, because of they talked to they've talked to other presidents before, and they've always kind of just said, well, we'll work on it or whatever. They worked with the Department of Interior. We'll work on it. And he said the Trump campaign, and Trump was the first president or campaign or candidate who actually said, no, that makes sense. We'll do that.
Right. Very transactional. Another example that I just happened to see this week.
But transactional, I want to be clear. Yeah. Transactional in and of itself can be a little bit, how do I want to say, robotic. It's also got to make sense.
Well,
does that make sense?
At least the way I think of transactional. So if you feel like that needs to be clarified, I don't mind. But I think of it like, I'm not saying anything happens. I'm saying
right.
That's the whole deal. Like, and I'm just saying stay in it, because politics is that, right? Stay in it regardless of who's there. You have to be willing to still make transactions, and that's the way to think about this versus the identity politics that's constantly played. Speaking of identity politics, I saw another guy who highlighted that Trump was his president, a friend of, I'll say a friend of, I'll say not a friend, but someone that I know, an acquaintance, and he was highlighting that Trump was his president of all reasons for this reason. He was put on, if you remember, there was the FBI came out some years ago with a Black identity extremist list. If y'all remember that terminology being used so many years ago, And he highlighted during Trump's first presidency, Trump put a stop to that and he got off that list. That's why he's a big fan of Trump. And that's just kind of a dichotomy you would never think about, a black identity extremist saying Trump's my guy because he got me off that list of being watched. And I highlight that again, not to highlight Trump per se, but it's more or less to remind people, as I've talked about on Politically Conscious, you never know someone's interest. So don't be so arrogant that you assume somebody's voting for or against their own interests when you don't understand what's important to someone. And I thought that was just another example that I just happened to see this week of someone saying, hey, he's
Right.
my, because I'm no longer on a watch list by the FBI. I can understand that regardless of
Right.
what I may think politically.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let's go to another cut, if you will. All right, this is Shelley's favorite conversation, Emille. I pull out the Panama Canal. But here's some explanation, because we talked about, we didn't quite know why he was bringing it up. This cut kind of explains at least the Panama Canal out of the Greenland conversation and the Panama conversation. It gives a little explanation behind it. Emille, I'll let you respond to it first.
Something Trump argues is also at risk. The root of his concern comes from these two ports on either side of the canal, both owned by a company based in Hong Kong.
China's at both ends of the Panama Canal. We didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama.
This company is in charge of coordinating the arrival and departures of each ship at its ports, managing the loading and unloading of cargo, and working with the Port Authority on customs clearance and cargo documentation. These things are mainly commercial in nature. But
there are geopolitical concerns within the United States about the extent to which Chinese-based companies control patterns of global trade. And it's not just Trump. Biden administration was really concerned about that kind of competition with China too.
that concern has to do with the power of the ruling Communist Party. Under Chinese law, private companies are required to cooperate with the government if it's deemed necessary for national security. And China defines national security in pretty broad terms: economic security, geopolitical security, domestic security, anything to safeguard the interests of the Communist Party. So having control of two ports in one of the busiest shipping lanes on the planet?
It is a legitimate concern because in the case of a conflict between the United States and China, there are fears that this company could interrupt the operations of the canal with pretty significant strategic and economic implications for the United States.
But while Trump may have concerns about the neutrality of the canal, the government of Panama has been clear.
El canal no tiene control directo o indirecto ni de China, ni de la Comunidad Europea, ni de Estados Unidos o de cualquiera otra potencia.
So those are the two sides. And maybe now you're asking, if the US has a problem, can they do anything about it? Like, if they feel Panama has in some way violated the decades-old terms of its ownership of the canal, is there some clause that might allow the US to seize the canal back, as Trump says he wants to do? Well, according to everyone we spoke to and the Panamanian government, no, there is no provision that would allow for this. Really, the only way the US could retake control would be through military force, something that Trump has refused to rule out, but which most analysts believe is unlikely, leaving the world with the question, so what now?
Emille, your thoughts again, just kind of breaking down, as we said on the last show, we wasn't sure why it popped up. That gives
Right.
some of the explanation of the concerns. And in that cut, we find out that the Biden administration too was concerned about specifically China having control of those two ports on both ends of the canal. But just kind of want to get y'all thoughts on hearing once we kind of hear the why.
Well, you know me, I'm always going to go back to the root. The Carter administration in 1977 negotiated the return of the Panama Canal 22 years later in 1999. And the authority of the Panama Canal, which is a government body that oversees the operation of the canal itself, hired Chinese contractors about 8 years ago. They just renewed their contract. I think it's about a 10-year contract. So that renewal should run out in 2032 or something like that. So the name of the company is called Hutchison, and Hutchison is a big global presence in shipping. It's not just in China. It's not just a Chinese company. It's a Hong Kong company. And that does matter because Hong Kong, even though it is a part of China, technically is still the most autonomous and the most independent element of China right now, even today, even after the handover in 1999. So you have this entity called Hutchison that does control the movement of ships. They do control that, but at the direction of the ACP, and the president of Panama is a very pro-American president. He does want America to prosper, and he said very clearly he is an independent thinker, but he does love the fact that he's making a lot of money from those fees that ships pay in order to go back and forth, and he does not want his economy disrupted by China or anyone else. So when you put all that together, Panama is a strategic lever. It has been since its inception. The new locks in Panama just came online about 8 or 9 years ago. Those locks allow for bigger ships. Those ships are now in line with the largest ships in the world in terms of cargo transport. So you have this really strategic lever in Panama that right now is overseen, operated by a Chinese company out of Hong Kong. That is a concern. It should be a concern. It was a concern for Biden. It was a concern for Obama. It was a concern for Clinton. It was a concern for George W. Bush. Every president since the handover has been concerned about the Panama Canal. Only one has actually said he might use force. It is a legitimate issue to talk about, but not in the belligerent way he has, because there's no evidence that belligerence is needed, given the fact that Panama has remained very independent and very neutral between China and America.
Fair enough. Shelley, I'll get your thoughts. I'll say, as when I was a young kid, you first start learning about politics, you know what I mean? I'm old enough, Jimmy Carter's the president that I remember, right? And so the one thing I felt like I learned as a kid, it was wrong for Jimmy Carter to give away the Panama Canal. Like that was one of the first political thoughts I remember as a kid, if you will. But your thoughts, again, I know you don't want a lot of credence to it, but now we're kind of digging into why Trump is, at least why he's bringing it up. Emille says he doesn't like the way that he's bringing it up, but it's clearly been a concern, as he said, for our country for years. Go ahead, Shelley.
Well, if you guys remember, was it Noriega? Noriega was the president of Panama. And one of the reasons why he got in trouble was he wasn't content to make the money for his country from the ships. He went backdoor and allowed the Panama Canal to be used for smuggling. And so China is not really interested in drug smuggling, but they are interested in smuggling arms, people, and things like that. So the thought is, and it's a legitimate concern, having a foreign entity in control of what goes through there can be dangerous to American national security interests. So I think, like you said, I don't mind the belligerence. The belligerence works on some levels, and so I don't mind it. You know what I mean? If everyone else was concerned about it and nothing's ever been done about it, maybe belligerence may work.
Yeah, and I actually respect that. I respect that in the sense of, again, we're talking about politics. Sometimes it's what you said. We talked about it last show, Shelley, where we said the appearance of strength, if you will. So sometimes that's the political play as well. Put it out there publicly, say this is on the table. You know what I mean? Even if it's not the actual plan, but your enemies or your allies don't know if it's actually part of the plan or not. So just by saying it. So that could be the play. I definitely understand it from that strategic standpoint as well. All right, let's play.
Montoya,
go ahead, brother.
I rarely pull a card, but I'm going to pull a card because I was in the military for an entire career. And this is the problem with belligerence.
Okay.
You gotta have a credible threat. And the problem with this credible threat is, if we want to go to war with China over the Panama Canal, we're telling the rest of South America and we're telling the rest of the world that we choose when to invade sovereign territory. Now, we just told Russia that's bad. We know that's bad because we did it in Iraq. So to to talk about belligerence without a cause other than I don't like the contractor you hired for operating the canal, that to me is not a credible threat. That's just belligerence for belligerence sake, in my opinion. I'm here to say that there is a legitimate concern, but barring saying I'm going to offer an American company and I'm going to undercut the cost of that. And by the way, American companies were involved in the bidding of the rebidding of the contract after it expired a few years ago. And the American companies lost fair and square, according to what I read. So I'm not here to say that it's not strategic or not good. I'm saying belligerence in this case only adds fuel to the fire that you can invade a country because you don't like what they're doing. I don't like that, and I don't think that's a good use of the military, even as a threat.
No, hey,
That's fair.
Very fair. Very fair, brother. All right, let's go to another short part of the actual inauguration speech and get y'all thoughts on this one.
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
We'll welcome our viewers in on Channel 9 right now. You've been watching the network coverage. We've been on KTVD, but now we're all together on Channel 9. Marshall Zellner here, too, to talk a little bit more about these executive orders and what they actually do.
Right, as he signed them, they showed up on a White House website, so if anybody wants to look at them, just do a web search of White House and executive actions, and you can read that they're not very long, pretty much very simple to understand. The impact, though, is not so simple. He just signed some of those executive orders. At the most basic level, there is one that he talked about that would mean individuals must declare male or female, and that really, from a federal standpoint, only really impacts the U.S. passport, because you've been able to put X for another gender identity. That presumably would go away. State documents, however, in Colorado would not change. IDs and driver's licenses can currently say male, female, or X. Birth certificates can be changed to say male, female, intersex, or X. Those are documents that are state regulated and would not change because they're run by Colorado. So it's really from the federal standpoint, that declaration, I think, rescinds an executive order from former President Joe Biden. Basically says we're just going to call people male, female, at least on federal documents. I know this is just one step toward one of the promises he made on the campaign trail about, one of them was getting men out of women's sports. So this kind of puts a spotlight on universities, I think, that may get federal funding. And this is where universities and athletic funding, that there's a muddy mix there. But if any university gets federal funding for athletics, then it becomes a question, will you allow someone who identifies as transgender on a sport, and could you put something at risk?
Shelley, it sounds like it was one of his campaign promises.
It's common sense. I mean, I don't even know how we got here. I really don't. I don't understand how we got here. For such a small population, I really don't understand how I don't understand how this is even an argument.
Not fair enough. But again, a big enough argument to be addressed via the inauguration, and you hear potential implications. That was particularly in Colorado, if you didn't catch that context. So I just wanted people to hear the context of versus a state right versus the federal level. So that's kind of why I played that cut, just kind of informing people, again, before you just get stuck into the ideology, I wanted to let people kind of hear how it could play out policy-wise. Emille, any thoughts on Trump highlighting there's only male and only female?
Absolutely. So there's over 500,000 student athletes in the NCAA, and right now the NCAA president, roughly in the last couple of years, has said maybe there's 10 transgender athletes, maybe that he can track. They don't track the numbers of transgender athletes in the NC2A, but it's not a large percentage by any means. It could be 100, and it still wouldn't be a large percentage of over 500,000 athletes. So this is more fulfilling a campaign promise, but quite frankly, I think it's the beginning of a way of thinking that does harm to people who have very few protections. I know for a lot of people, myself included, because I'm not in that group of people who are transgender, it's not easily understood. But for the people who are there, it's a very personal, very intense and emotional issue that does have ramifications to their mental health. They are the most likely people to commit suicide. They are the most likely people to be assaulted. They are the most likely people to be victims of violent crime. So these are people who have real lives and are affected by these words. So rather, it's not that it's common sense. I think 99.9 with a large 9 number repeating after it have no problem with just male or just female. But for that small segment of the population, this could be the beginning of very harmful rhetoric.
Let me ask a quick question there. You think harmful in the sense of if the campaign promise is, if you will, to keep males out of female sports, you feel like that actual, if that's the goal, you feel like somehow that goal is actually harmful in the way that you mentioned? Because I think that, again, I feel like Shelley in this sense, that part is just common sense, not addressing or definitely understanding everything you just mentioned, Emille, as far as what they personally go through, but just making sure that the sports are aligned, male versus female, based on actual gender. I don't know that actually brings the harm that you're mentioning, in my opinion.
And this is the struggle for people in general, and for the NC2A, and for the Olympics. It's not an easy answer, so there's no cut and dry way to solve it. I disagree that every single person who's transgender should be excluded from every single athletic competition, but I don't know what that line is, and it's not a very bright line if there is one. So this very strict, everybody's either male or female, just excludes people summarily from being able to identify as something that they are struggling to, or that they've made a very clear decision. They're not struggling, but the society's struggling with them. Do I have an answer personally? No, I do not. But I do know that making it a black and white, cut and dry, male or female is not the answer. It's just ignoring the problem, which won't make it go away. It'll just drive it underground, which is where it will fester and become something it does not need to be. So yes, I agree that it will harm people, but I don't know how yet. And yes, I also agree that male and female sports should be fairly well distinguished, but I don't have an answer for how to do that yet.
I think we have an answer. I think it's cut and dry when it comes to the sport specifically. I'm like Shelley, I don't understand it. And when I say I don't understand it, I'm just, again, you're actually pushing for unfairness to actually have a stronger gender in a female sport. So that's why I see that sport.
But the data doesn't support that, though. That's all I'm saying. The data's not there.
Yeah, I don't think you have data that supports that, but we'll talk about it later. Let's go to another cut.
I don't believe a lot of the people who say they're mad about rappers who performing at Trump's inauguration events, because before the concert comes the content. And if you're not turned off by the negative, toxic content that's coming from hip hop, how you gonna get mad at where somebody chooses to perform that content at? So if people want to support toxic, negative, low-level, deplorable, vulgar, profane content, and then want to micromanage, well, here's where they're supposed to perform it at, here's where they're supposed to do a concert at, that don't even go together. It don't even make sense. I don't believe it. I think it's just fake outrage that's coming from a lot of people. Because in reality, if you had a problem with that content, you'd have been done with a lot of them rappers a long time ago, you heard me? So where they do a concert at wouldn't even matter to you. My challenge for hip-hop is to channel some of that energy you have for where people should do a concert into what type of content you choose to speak up about versus.
Bravo.
I could dig it.
100%.
100%.
I've dropped so many rappers from my playlist because I can't stand, especially as I get older. I was, I could get crunk and be ignorant back when I was younger, but the older I get, the more I see the harm done by those lyrics. I mean, and the trash that passes for hip hop today. I laugh sometimes because I'm a big hip hop head and I love hip hop, but I also don't like sorry lyrics. And so if the people that I respected were on that stage, I would have a beef. But everybody that was on that stage, they all have reputations for being where they need to be to make the most money. And if they made money doing that, then that's big ups to them for that. But in terms of content, that clip was 100% spot on. because we are not having the connection we need to have over the content versus the location of a concert.
All right. I know you like it as well, Shelley. Quick thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just, let me tell you something. And I'm speaking to the community now. First of all, it's day 2. All right. Like day 1 was Tuesday. This is day 2. And everything is angering the community. It was the executive orders Monday. I will actually go back to Friday. It was Snoop and Snoop and Rick Ross and Nelly performing. Then it was the executive orders. Then it was we've got boycott, don't watch NPR or Home Cooking Network. They don't give them ratings. That was Sunday. And then yesterday it was the J6 pardons. And so what I'm saying to the community is, one, you can't sustain this type of anger for 4 years. It's unhealthy. It's your mental health at risk. And it's bad. Second, if you look at all of these fights, with the exception of the one we're talking about now, it's always for other people. I don't care about the J6ers being pardoned. I know I had one on my show last night, Brandon Strocker, good dude, right? But I don't know nearly 1,600 people personally. Do I know there were some that, took number 2s?
Let me do this, Shelley, if you don't mind, because we're gonna play a cut that gets specifically into that. So if
I'll just talk about right. Yeah, so my point is, that the Nelly, like this guy said, is manufactured. Someone put it out there, and it ran, and the people ran with it. And what I want to say that is going to be controversial is, it seems like the entire country has moved on from November 5th and the election, with the exception of us. Businesses have moved on. Everybody's moved on. Yeah. Like you said, Bezos, Zuckerberg, all these guys were standing behind Trump. Remember when Biden was running in 2020, they were all on his side. Right. So everyone's moved. And we're just the ones, mostly, let's say mostly, standing in the breach, if you will, and of saying rah rah and angry. Yeah, even white women who were told that their ovaries would be taken out if Trump won, even they went for Trump in larger numbers, percentage-wise. Yes. So I think at some point, being mad at Nelly has done a lot for his city in terms of community work, donations, helping people. I'm not sure Rick Ross's history, but I know Nelly has. Snoop, without question. Beyond the other stuff he's done, the Pop Warner League that he funds, and that's not just in California. That's all across the country. Yep. And so that's getting kids off the street. So I'm not going to be mad at Snoop for a performance and not cheer for the work that he's done in the community for years. Even the fact that Snoop is still with his wife and his family is still intact, even that is a small matter because it's his personal business, but it also makes the world see, or people see, black men see, black women see, that real love and marriage is effective and can be long lasting, even as a famous person. So I just believe that a lot of this is being generated to drive content, to drive clicks, to drive traffic, and I think that's really what it is. And the only people paying attention is us. And it's going to be it's 2020. Let me say this as I finish. If white guilt were the gas meter on your car, the light would be on in your car. It really would. Like, people don't care about these cries of racism and this is wrong and this is wrong, and it's not working anymore because everybody's moved on.
Hey, politically conscious, again, challenging us to become politically astute. And I think these conversations add to that. I'm going to steal a little moment and highlight re-education of the Negro, if you will. Quick piece I wrote back in 2017, and it was in reference to when Chrisette Michele actually performed. And I wrote this real quick, and it just says, Black Socrates speaks, politics and friendships. I don't know about you, but I love Black women too much to disown a queen because she sang at a Trump inauguration. Her singing at the inauguration isn't an indicator of how she voted, so it's possible you're mad at someone who may have voted the same way as you. The idea that you need to agree with me to be my friend is becoming more and more prevalent these days. I seriously suggest that we look in the mirror and recognize it's a weak-ass position to disown someone who you previously considered a friend over a political difference. A friend liking or disliking Trump may end in a disagreement, but affect our friendship not in the least bit. Their actions towards me will always take precedent over how they voted, period. Just my 3 cents. All I ask is that you think. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah.
I appreciate
expressing words. I said the same thing back then. I couldn't believe it. They ruined this woman's career. Ruined it for performing.
Yeah. And, we were talking about being transactional, and quite frankly, Snoop, Rick, Nelly might all have, a strategy, and I believe they do, in performing. And it's not that that strategy is necessarily, some sort of sly, stealthy move. It's simply, this is the most powerful person in the nation. I need to make sure that I have access to the resources this person can provide. If me performing does that, oh, by the way, I probably got a fat check out of it. I'm going to do that. And we need to stop looking at it as an ideological position. It's a practical position. And Shelley's very clear about, it's a pragmatic time. Do what you need to advance your agenda. If that means working with this dude, work with him. If it means singing on his stage, sing on it. But don't be so ideologically bound that you can't see the opportunity presented by someone like this.
Right.
No, absolutely. And I'll say
and
this.
It's not even, can I add to Emille? It's not even ideologically bound. It's really just an emotional outburst.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with ideology.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
I won't disagree with you at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And so out of the people we talked about, Soulja Boy, Rick, we didn't mention Soulja Boy, but Rick Ross, all of them, now social media obviously is holding Snoop to a standard because of what he said what he said himself about people performing. And that's understandable. We're in a social media age. We can expect that part to happen. Here's the bigger picture for anybody listening, just to kind of keep highlighting this thing about being transactional. And as Emille said, there may be a practical reason. The idea is to realize we can all change. That's part of it. When it comes to politics, to a degree, we get stuck. I've been advocating, and Shelley knows this, for us to be independent for at least a decade since he's known me. And I'm not trying to tell people on here to be independent, but I'm just challenging to understand, to play politics, whether you're independent or on a side, it still means, for example, Obama or can be friendly with Trump at that funeral, if you will, because during the campaign trail, while there's going to be a bunch of mudslinging, if we were running against each other, as cool as me and Emille is, if we were going against each other, we would mudsling in a political thing. But at the end, once it's over and one of us wins, we have to now come together and work with one another. That is the political arena, period, point blank. And I think we don't quite understand that's the arena, period, point blank. Mudsling while we fight. But once it's over, I have to figure out a way to work with you. So I will have to call you a name on the campaign trail and then shake your hand afterwards to see what we can actually do together. Just wanted to kind of walk through that process.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. It takes a lot for you to figure out what you're going to do. Even if you can't work with them, acknowledge that you're trying to, or acknowledge that maybe you just can't figure it out. But at least you're not willing to just throw them in the trash, because right now the president of the United States is Donald J. Trump.
Yep. I
Yep.
said one last note on this. Charlamagne the God, I saw him on the Breakfast Club highlighting like how it was so, in his opinion, he loved that Michelle Obama stood on business. She's never been in political office. I absolutely understand her personally. If she don't like the man, hey, I'm not going to the inauguration. That's a personal thing. But he was applying what she did as if our politicians, because what he highlighted was, you just told us for the last so many years or so many months, he's Hitler. Now you're keying with him. Like, if that doesn't prove to you what politics actually is, you're
Right.
actually missing the whole boat to categorize it that way. That's what politics is. He's Hitler.
Right.
Yesterday, you won. I shake your hand and work together today. That's the epitome of politics. And he actually categorized it to stay in this emotional place, the way I look at it. And I respect Charlamagne the God, but I feel like he got that absolutely wrong. That's why I'm calling it out. All right, let's play another one of these cuts.
Is that a thing? Preemptive, preemptive blanket pardons? I mean, I haven't heard about this since like Monopoly with a get out of jail free card.
Trump has discussed with advisors whether to grant preemptive pardons. What does that say? That he wants to excuse them for things before anybody's even saying there's an investigation.
President Trump, as he winds down his last few weeks in office, is considering preemptive pardons. What a mess. More as we know.
Source saying that some of the president's inner circle, well, they're telling him that it would be perfectly fine to pardon his family and other associates preemptively, even though they haven't been charged with any crimes. How much damage could be done to this country can he do to this country on his way out?
The hypocrisy, Shelley, the hypocrisy.
I mean, it is what it is. I think that the key thing is Trump never did those things. He never preemptively pardoned anybody. And what he said then was, because he could have, the people who went up to the rally and Trump voters, everyone knew he was going to run again. They wanted him to pardon the J6ers before he went out of office. And the reason why he didn't was because he felt like they hadn't been charged with a crime. It would be wrong to preemptively pardon somebody. And one of the things that his people had said back then was it would also show that they were guilty, right, by pardoning them. So he never did it. And it made good.
Well, and I respect that you laid out that he actually never did it. Actually, what I meant, I actually played the cut just to give context, is the hypocrisy of what's happening with Biden.
No. I was getting
that's
to
the
that.
hypocrisy that I'm pointing out by playing that cut. Like we're talking about Biden's doing this or considering trying to do this, but again, talking about how politics is played, it was called out when Trump was going out, and now you have Biden actually doing it. So I'm kind of saying hypocrisy in reference to
No, I knew that. Yeah. There's a actual funny one where someone made one that says Rachel Maddow debates herself, and it's her talking about Trump and then talking about what Biden did. But what's interesting about the pardons, everyone's got to understand the very act of being pardoned means that you did something. Now, whether that is smashing a window at the Capitol or selling dope to grandmothers or, allowing illegal activity on your website.
Getting caught with a gun on a bus when you're Lil Wayne in New York.
Right. So, you know what I mean? The very act of being pardoned means someone did something, right? And so Biden also pardoned 2,500 people. In those 2,500 people were guys that were caught with child porn on their computers. There were drug dealers. There were guys that possibly was involved in murder. So, and I'm not saying they did not deserve those pardons, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but to be outraged at the January 6ers and not understand that pardons involve people who have, by and large, committed a crime in some way. And whether it's a misdemeanor, felonies, whatever it is, there have been people who have committed some serious crimes who have been pardoned. And for the most part, we've ignored all of those people.
Let me jump in real
And
quick. I got one more cut that's going to specifically get into the J6. If you
yeah,
will.
my battery's going to run low.
Okay, let's see. Hopefully we can keep you on. We only got 10 more minutes. So hopefully you can get 10 minutes out of us. Emille, any thoughts? Again, I was just kind of calling out the preemptive part, and then I'm going to move to the J6 after this.
Absolutely. You should. I know why he did it. He explained it well, in my opinion. I think there is a case to be made for those preemptive pardons. I don't like them, but I understand why he would do it. But again, what the message it sends is that what Shelley said, even if there is no guilt or there's no fact that would support a guilty verdict, the mere fact of you pardoning someone preemptively creates the appearance of it. And that's enough. When it comes to the presidency, something that I learned as a military officer, I hold dearly. The presence or the appearance of impropriety is impropriety.
Yes.
Right? I do not equivocate on that. That's how I live my life as a military officer. I try to live my life that way now. And I expect the president to do the same. So when Biden did that, it gave the appearance of impropriety, even if none was present. And that's enough for me to call it what it is, which is a problem.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a problem. And I agree with you, Emille, even we don't have a lot of time to explain it. But I can say to you, based on why it was done, I actually understand the why, but I would never okay it for the exact same reasons that you said. Again, just the way you said it beautifully, so I won't try to repeat it, but I would never do it. I wouldn't want to set that precedent, but I do understand because we, in a sense, it's a political witch hunt going after our enemies or whatever, which I think I've always said Trump was right to feel like that's what happened to him. But I've also not been a fan of him openly saying, I'm going to go after my enemies. I just don't like that conversation in American politics. I know that it happens, but I don't like putting that on Front Street. And that's part of the reason why Biden did it. I'm just acknowledging that, but I don't agree with it for the same reasons that you just mentioned, Emille. All right, let's play this last cut, and hopefully we can keep Shelley before his battery dies.
Late in the day on President Trump's first day after he was sworn in, he pardoned roughly 1,500 people who had been charged in connection with the attack on the Capitol on January 6, 2021. We need to hold the doors of the Capitol, including some people who were charged with attacking police officers. There's no specific way that pardons happen in a presidency. Often presidents will issue their most controversial ones at the end. Bill Clinton did that, for example. Donald Trump also did that at the end of his presidency. This, however, is highly unusual, both because of the type of pardons that they are and the fact that they're coming right out of the gate. By doing this on day one, Trump is trying to show that he is fulfilling a pledge that he had made to people who were arrested essentially in support of him. He has also been trying for 4 years to rewrite the history of what took place that day.
That was a day of love.
And this helps him to achieve that goal. President Trump typically views the world through the lens of how people treat him and how they behave toward him. To that end, he spent a fair amount of his first day as president for a second time complaining that his predecessor, President Biden, had preemptively pardoned a number of people, including his family members, but also people involved in the House Select Committee that investigated the January 6th attack.
Why are we helping some of the people? Why are we helping Liz Cheney?
It's not clear that such preemptive pardons can do a whole lot. They're fairly untested legally. But Trump made clear that he was upset that Biden had tried to help people who Trump considered to be his enemies. All of this simply reinforces a sense of unease in Washington for people who have been oppositional to Donald Trump, for people who have been critical of him, for people who have tried to investigate him, or at least to serve as a check on his power when he was president the first time.
Tonight, 6 individuals who assaulted me as I did my job on January 6th, as did hundreds of other law enforcement officers, will now walk free. My family, my children, and myself are less safe today because of Donald Trump and his supporters. I've been concerned for myself and my family's safety ever since I testified before Congress. If you remember, I didn't even make it through my congressional testimony before I received my first threat from a member of the American public who called me and threatened my life literally as I was giving testimony. And those threats have continued to this day.
against both myself and members of my family. In recent months, my mother has been swatted, a 76-year-old woman who's guilty of nothing other than having a son, a police officer who responded to the Capitol on January 6th. And she's also had human feces thrown on her while she was raking leaves in her front yard.
So you hear Michael Fanon is the officer that was tased and survived a heart attack thereafter, if you will. So you hear his personal testimony. But yeah, let's talk about these pardons for the J6ers. Emille, I'll let you start and then go to Shelley.
Never ever tell me this is a law and order president. I would have understood if he had done a case-by-case basis, but he did not. He just gave a blanket pardon to everyone who was convicted or accused in that. And to me, that's a problem. And I see it loud and clear. And in other circles outside of this conversation, I see he generates a very intense loyalty using these pardons. You can talk about Lil Wayne, but you can talk about these 1,500. They already did enough to invade the Capitol. At least a portion of them did. Certainly a large portion of them did. But honestly, who knows how loyal they'll be? And Officer Fanon was very right to question whether or not he's as safe as he was before the pardons. I understand why Trump did it. I just don't know if I agree that the way he did it was the right way. I think he should have done a case-by-case basis. He should have looked at every single individual. And for those who did do harm to the officers, that would have been a message sent loud and clear that you don't do that. And I do believe in law enforcement, and I do care for the health and safety of those who are entrusted with enforcing the law. But he didn't do that. And therefore, I can't see how he could justify himself as a law and order president, which is what he says he wants to be. So for me, it's a really clear contrast as to what happened and how he treated the J6ers with the pardon.
Shelley, you know me, you've known me a long time, and in mass incarceration is a baby of mine. And so I'm never really a fan of the words law and order, if you will, because I don't think historically it's played out well for our community, if you will. But Emille says this example says that he's not one based on Fanon saying the 6 people that actually attacked him, or at least according to Fanon, are actually part of the group that was let out. I think I learned from your show there is, to a degree, some case by case, even though,
right. Well, here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Those 6 people did time. So what I would say to that officer, hey, you shouldn't be going through this. And those 6 people that are threatening your family, there's a bunch of us who support Trump would stand next to you and beat him back for you for threatening your family, because that's dead wrong. But those 6 people that were involved in that, they did time. So it's like, how much time does a man need to do for beating up a cop? I don't know. I don't know what the sentence is. You know what I mean? So and so that's the thing. Many of these people, remember this happened 2021. The more egregious cases went to trial or pled out very early on. So many of these people have either served time, been in jail, went in, came out, you know what I mean? Got home confinement, whatever it is. So the question becomes is, how long should you be in jail for going into the Capitol or, or beating up Sitnik? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great thought, like giving that context, because like you said, especially if anybody was still in, we don't know, like I said, some people are on house arrest and that type of thing. But for those that were if they were still in, like you're saying, if you went in there, that's 4 years ago. So yeah, you probably would have been out.
There was an old lady. There's a story of an old lady who had gone to the rally. She was old. So by the time she walked down to the Capitol, people had gone in already. And she walked in with her cane, everything, walked in. And through geofencing, they finally got around to her. And they arrested her. And she went on trial. And so she's counted, quote unquote, as a J6er.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so not all of them, like Emille said, they're all not the same, but many of them have served their time. And all these pardons did was basically say, Maggie Haberman, there's a difference between opposition to Trump and completely lying about everything that's going on. And there's a big complete difference between that. But I don't like what's happening to that officer. It shouldn't happen. And those are the crazies that are amongst us, and they exist everywhere.
On both sides when we talk about sides. So I would love to, if we will, end this, because Shelley, was something that you said on your show. You talked about your responsibility as a voter. Obviously, we know you're in a sense you're for Trump, if you will, but I feel like what you said on your show about your responsibility now as a voter to hold a politician accountable is something anybody that cares about politics should make sure they understand this is how you play even as the voter. So if you could highlight what you said on your show yesterday.
Yeah, I basically said, like, I spent almost a year on the radio pushing, cajoling, encouraging, yelling, screaming, debating for people to vote for Trump. He won. He's there. I celebrated the inauguration. Now my job as a voter is to make sure he does all the things that I need him to do. And not him necessarily by himself, but really the Republican Senate and Congress. I need them to be singularly focused on getting the things done that he ran on, because he's the guy that won. And so that's what my job as a voter is right now. I'm not a cheerleader anymore. Now I'm a coach, and I'm analyzing the players. It's all business. No, it's not personal. But if a Republican governor or a Republican congressman or a Republican senator is not doing something that I think they should be doing, or Trump is doing something that I think he shouldn't be doing, whatever, now is my job as a voter to speak on it. So I cheerled. Now I'm the voter now. I want what I asked for.
Holding them accountable. Emille, any thoughts about our role as voters who quite often, we don't think, in a sense, our one vote matters. So for anybody thinking that way, here's your job, not just to get ramped up for the general election and show up and now just simply complain. What does holding them accountable looks like, which is basically Shelley saying that's what he's going to do for his side. Your thoughts? And
for sure. Ask Hillary Clinton if a vote matters. I mean, she lost by how many votes in swing states? Those were individual votes that truly did have outsized effect. And that's the point. The point is that as a voter, you have power. Sometimes we forget that because we see all this big money. Elon Musk throws out $275 million in like 3 months. And we think, how can I compete with that? He was competing with you, not the other way around. You're not competing with him. He's trying to figure out how he can influence you, the voter. You have the power. And once the vote is cast, they've got to prove all the time. And Shelley's got a platform where he can call people out, and he will call them out. I have no doubt in my mind that if he's displeased, the radio waves will echo his displeasure. And that's how it should be for every single voter. We have letters, we have phone calls, we have emails, and we have social media. And the point here is that I should be making it very unpleasant for someone I voted for to go against the promises he made me before I voted for him.
Absolutely.
Once that's true, we can start to see change. We can actually affect the trajectory of a politician while they're in office between votes simply by showing up and speaking up. No more should we be wondering what could happen. A politician must be responsive to the people, but the people's job is to say what they should respond to.
Hey, Montoya, Emille, I gotta go.
We're going. Emille, it's not what he is, he, she, or X, man. Hey, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. We'll pop up on y'all again later, brother.